Welcome back to Tip Top Talking Time. We'll be talking about... My name's Isaac.
And I'm Jonah. Yes, I love talking about God.
Yes, it's great.
Oh,
Well,
what's that?
Whoa.
A knock.
A knock on that side of the house.
A knockety knock knock.
Hey, what are you guys doing?
Oh, we're just, you know,
just talking about God.
Yeah, having a nice little chat.
Yeah, just on video.
I love, talking.
Cool, can I join in too?
Yeah.
Okay, guy that we don't know.
Totally.
Cool! Oh, by the way, I found a cat, just came to return it.
Tip Top Talking Time.
Wow.
Welcome back to Tip Top Talking Time. I'm Isaac.
I'm Tom.
I'm Jonah.
And I'm Isaac. We'll be talking about...
Vessels. And the way to kind of describe that is that God uses people as his vessel.
Tom's our guest. If you
Yeah,
haven't
I was
realised.
gonna say, we have a special guest today.
I haven't just been here all this time.
Yeah, well, let's begin with the first thing. So the Bible was written by everyday people, not people that went to college and did these crazy education thingamabobs. I'm familiar with those, totally. They were everyday people. Example, Saul, who became Paul. He was someone that was against Christianity and hated them and tortured them and stuff. And then eventually Jesus said, yo, come to me. And then he said, okay. And then he went and wrote lots of the New Testament.
It just goes to show that throughout both the Old and New Testament, in the deepest, darkest corners of the world, God is still present and he's still doing his thing with everybody. And one of the things when I was kind of thinking about this topic is that in our world today, in the deepest, darkest corners as well, God kind of strategically puts people in different areas to kind of go, yo, look, we got to talk, or we got to do this, or even a small intervention.
Once I was at Pakenham Station, there was a guy that asked me for a cigarette, and I was like, bro, I don't smoke, but I do wear a poncho.
Basically the same thing.
And then we just had a long conversation, then I eventually asked him what he knows about Jesus, and he said, well, all I know is that he was a guy that died on a cross, and I told him about what Jesus has done in my life. He was listening, and I could have planted seeds. God could have planted seeds through me.
It's really cool that people can speak about it through sincerity, through their own experiences. I've had times where I do numerous ministry things here and there, and I catch up with friends, and there'll just be this little pause, and one guy will go, you know, those camps you do, or that thing that you do is really cool. What's your drive to do that? And it's just a perfect segue to talk about why you do it as a part of the fellowship of God and building the kingdom and all that.
I think that's why God uses ordinary people so much, is because ordinary people are so much more relatable and people find your ordinary stories so interesting and sincere, I guess. That's what I've noticed, at least.
The reason why I made this series, well, sometimes God just puts ideas in my head if I'm having trouble and I don't know what to do and I'm trying to figure it out for ages. Sometimes it just goes, oh, I should pray. Okay. Once I was just on a camp with Jonah and I just suddenly thought, hey, I should talk about things on YouTube. Hey, I should do it with someone so that there's more than one opinion and more ideas. Hey, Jonah's my friend and lives nearby.
Friend.
Do you guys really need to talk this out right now?
I asked Jonah to do it with me and he was like, okay.
Yeah, why not?
No.
Well, a really good example of God using people is the story of Moses. He was a very unlikely hero because, he was born into a family.
He was born into the world.
So Moses was born into an Israelite family, but through various circumstances, he ended up living in the Pharaoh's palace, and he was raised basically as a prince. So he was basically against the Israelites, and they were his slaves pretty much. And then one day it kind of got revealed to him that he was actually an Israelite, and he kind of just, after he accidentally killed a guard, and then he just ran off into the wilderness, was out there for a pretty long time, and then God came to him through a burning bush, and
I choose you!
Moses was actually really scared to actually do God's work because he was like, oh, I'm bad at talking.
I hate public speaking.
I'm nervous, however old I am now. God worked through him, and eventually Moses helped the Israelites escape.
And it says at the end of Deuteronomy that Moses was the best prophet. He was just an ordinary dude. David was one of 8, and Samuel came and was like, bro, looking for a new king because Saul disobeyed God, and
What a
yeah.
gangster.
And then Jesse was like, yeah, here are all 7 of my sons. Samuel was like, bro,
So
none of
many
them have the
options.
heart for this. God's looking for the heart, yo. Oh, there is this one other dude that's my son. And then he went and got David,
I
and
just
then
forgot him.
and then David, after fighting with Saul a lot and stuff, became king. And David was an everyday person. He was just a guy that looked after sheep.
It's funny as you're describing that, as he was like, oh yeah, there's this other son here. I'm just imagining like this family photo of all the sons and then someone standing in front of David. So Timothy in the book of Acts had this thing happen one day where Paul and Barnabas were kind of going around speaking the word, and Timothy is doing his job. He's doing his thing like as many other people in the Bible that we've spoken about already have done. And then one point in the day he goes, hey, we're going to come to your house for dinner. So they shared a meal with the family, and then they were like, you can come with us and you can help us speak about the word.
The brothers that Joseph had. Everyone had a lot of brothers.
Yeah, he was in a big happy family.
Yeah,
where
okay.
He
everyone
had 10
hated
other
him.
brothers.
10 other brothers.
Yeah.
Okay, it was pretty just a normal dude, and his father really liked him and favored him, gave him that cool Technicolor dream coat. Then all his brothers were like, that's not, wow. At first we're gonna kill him, and then sold him into slavery. Joseph ends up in...
Egypt. It's a place to be.
Basically, Joseph was a slave in Egypt, and then the Pharaoh had a dream, and God used Joseph to interpret that dream, and basically through that, Joseph became really high up in the ranks of Egypt, and basically saved the land from a famine.
And he had a bit of a bumpy ride on the way as well, which kind of goes to show, like, I hear so many people today kind of going, oh, life. But that's a kind of a part of the journey, I reckon. We get giddy about Gideon. That's my contribution for today.
Well, I guess that's the end of the episode. Bye.
When God recruited Gideon, it was a pretty cool part in the story, because basically in Judges 6 verse 15, "Pardon me, my lord," Gideon replied, "but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least of my family."
He's so polite. He's just like, pardon me, God.
Gideon was like the weak little nerd that runs around the playground with no friends. God chose Gideon, and Gideon didn't think he could do it because he didn't have that much self-confidence.
Not at all.
And God was like, you can do it. And then Gideon said, prove it. And then God was like, you can do it. And then Gideon said, okay, I'll do it and I'll save Israel. Gideon saves Israel, and it was really cool.
I think when we're talking about that, we're kind of underlying the idea that through the people that God uses, they act as beacons almost. And it's natural to be attracted to that kind of source of light and source of energy. And that's why there's so many people in today's world that's kind of like, yo, he's cool, let's kind of gather around his idea or her idea, and like,
You're like an oasis in a desert.
yeah.
People always come to you. It's way better when people come to you, asking you about God, when you go around talking to them, because some people have hardened hearts, they are not so open to it, but then some people that are curious will say, yo Isaac, that video I made really spoke to me, and I was just asking if I could wonder about questions.
And it's cool when stuff like that happens, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really awesome.
Hearing people talk at my church at the moment, I'm getting the underlying message that to practice the word of the Lord, that we need to do the word of the Lord, and I'm really kind of behind that idea that doing the word speaks so many different languages rather than just one. When I was younger, I probably struggled a lot with the textbook heavy stuff of Christianity, so I found it easier to do things like youth group and go along to camps and things. But I think now that I'm in adulthood, it comes a little bit more naturally. It's really cool in the essence whenever I guess you're asked or invited to do something, it's kind of like, my way of seeing it is God's kind of reaching out his arms going, this is a new experience for you. You don't know what could happen within this time. So whenever I kind of like, there's always some kind of tendency when you're asked to do something, it's like, oh, it's another thing. But if you come with it at the mentality that God is going to do something in that space of time, whether it's an afternoon or a day or 5 days or whatever, it's really kind of cool how that mentality flourishes in that experience, and the people that kind of situate themselves in that as well.
That's kind of like the idea of walking the walk and talking the talk. And people sometimes say it's easier to talk the talk than walk the walk.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like you were the other way around. It's kind of easier to do those hands-on things, and then through doing those activities, you learn how to go back and understand all the textbook stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a part of that was growing up in a youth group. I had a lot of really cool leaders who really got around the young guys, particularly, not like just the people who were there all the time, but they particularly took more initiative to get around the newer folk. And I think through that, I was able to learn a lot more quite easily, which was cool. Whenever I think about any kind of leadership role, whether that's at work or voluntary stuff, I kind of think that's kind of like almost life goals in an essence.
Life goals.
When I've worked alongside younger people, people my age, I've been able to come alongside them. And then I see them again after maybe a couple months, a year or 2 years or 5 years. It's really cool seeing the little transformations that are happening and that are still happening. And I think that's one of the most rewarding parts of doing anything that God calls you to do.
With that idea of, I guess, leading younger people, I think it's a pretty well-known fact that I do not like kids. When I went to Fiji earlier in the year, basically the entire program was teaching kids about God. For whatever reason, that was really easy for me to do, and it was really easy, and I got along with the kids super well. And I feel like not only did I teach them about God, but they also taught me about myself. And I think that's what teaching and leading people can do, is it teaches both people, really.
And I think you've hammered it home right there that not just kids, but anyone in that regard can bring out the best in us. And I think that's really cool.
Alright, well, to sum things up, God calls out anyone to be leader. It does not matter who you are, God still loves you and still wants to have you lead, and we are all called out to lead and teach people. You could plant seeds, you could fully go and have people become Christians on that day, and you could plant seeds that plant more seeds. It just spreads and it's awesome. And there are all sorts of different opinions, all sorts of different teachings, and well, I like to go by the fact that God loves me and God loves all the people around me. I like spreading that and teaching people that there is someone out there that loves them no matter what. Well, thank you for watching this episode with our special guest, Denham.
What a guy.
God bless you all.
See ya.
Peace out.